Welcome to Behind the Warrior, a podcast presented by the EOD Warrior Foundation. This series will focus on resources, interviews, and topics impacting EOD warriors, their families, and the military community at large.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Warrior podcast. I'm your host, Maria Shabla, and today we are very excited to be speaking to Tony Joyce, a former EOD tech and founder and executive director for Bubbles for Vets. Welcome to the podcast, Tony.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you. Tony, I always like to start from the beginning. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
Oh, wow. That's crazy. I grew up actually on a horse ranch in North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
I call it a horse ranch. We had about 50 head of horses and just over 200 head of cattle. So we raised cattle for beef. So I went to school there until high school. My dad got a job in Charleston, South Carolina. So I went to high school in Charleston and college in Columbia at USC.
Oh, wow. Well, that's kind of different. I haven't met a lot of people that grew up on a horse ranch.
Well, it's really funny because fast forward to 2001, and we arrived in Afghanistan very early in the conflict, whatever you want to call it. And I ended up having to teach all of my team how to ride a horse because none of them knew how.
Wow. So that really came in handy. Oh, that's so interesting. You never know where things are going to come in hand. So you have been an avid diver since high school. Can you tell us about how your passion for diving started?
Yes, ma'am. So illegally, we used to take dives over in the Lake Moultrie, Lake Marion area in Charleston, between Charleston and Columbia. And in high school, a very good friend of mine, I haven't talked to him in years, but Matt Weiss was a diver. His dad was a certified diver, certified him. His dad was an instructor. So we would dive there at the dam in Lake Moultrie. And at the dam, we found catfish that were laying at the mouth. Really use it a whole lot until I got into the service.
Interesting. Now, I have to stop you. When you say illegally, what does that mean in diving?
Well, I wasn't certified until later in the high school. So he just gave me the gear and said, "Here, breathe out of this and put this on and let's go."
Wow. Wow, you are brave.
You know, kids have no fear.
Yeah.
As an instructor, I see that every day. You know, kids are very resilient, and kids are actually easier to teach than adults, believe it or not.
Interesting. Oh, that's so interesting. Wow. Okay, well, that is a great story. So funny. So a catfish the size of a Volkswagen. I can't even imagine.
Scared the crap out of me, to be honest.
I bet. So now, with your experience diving, what made you decide to join the Army instead of the Navy?
Well, believe it or not, I actually tried to join the Navy in high school. I was going to be, I wanted to join the boat team. I wanted to be a SEAL, that whole 9 yards. But unfortunately, I didn't graduate high school at 18. I graduated at 17. And my father refused to sign the paperwork until after I spent at least a year in college.
Interesting.
So, one thing led to another. I got into college and I discovered girls. I discovered drinking, and I never left. So I actually didn't join the military until I was 27 years old. I had already graduated college. I graduated college in 95, and then didn't join the military until like 5 years later.
Wow, that is so wild. So I have to ask, what did you get your degree in?
I actually have degrees in chemistry and criminal psychology.
Interesting.
So it's actually kind of a funny story. The chemistry degree came in because I was dating a girl that was in there for chemistry, and I started taking classes just so I could hang out with her. And about my junior year, my advisor said, "Hey, Tony, do you know you only need like 2 more classes and you'll have a degree in chemistry?" I was like, "Wait, what?"
Wow.
So I took those 2 classes and I ended up getting 2 degrees.
That is wild. And they're so different, criminal justice and chemistry.
Yeah, the criminal psychology I've used
criminal
way
psychology.
more than the chemistry. Way more than the chemistry.
Wow. Wow. So then what prompted you to join the Army at 27?
I wanted to get, believe it or not, I wanted to get into federal law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my best friends was an FBI agent at the time. He got out of high school and went straight to the FBI. He said, "Okay, so go into the Army, be a military police for a couple of years, and then we will hire you directly out of the military police into the FBI, because military police have to go through the same training for FLETC as federal law enforcement does." Mm-hmm. Well, this was before 9/11. So obviously, totally different time frame.
Yeah.
But so I joined the Army. They did not have any MP spots open. They only had ordnance specialists jobs open. So basically BB counters, wasn't even EOD. So I said, okay, fine. I joined. I went, my first duty station was Redstone Arsenal, and I got bored really quick because I already had a degree, and counting bullets just didn't do it for me.
No. So you went in and enlisted? You didn't go in as an officer?
No, I went in and enlisted because I found out that the officer corps decided how long you stayed at each division, and the enlisted corps, you stayed as long as you wanted into whatever job you wanted. So I didn't want them telling me how long I could stay enlisted or stay in one division. So I enlisted.
Okay.
It was actually kind of funny because my DIs definitely tried to get me to go over to the officer.
Wow. Okay. So from BB counter to EOD tech, how did that come about?
I got really bored, like I said, and my first sergeant sent me over to the EOD detachment that was there on Redstone Arsenal to do, back then it was called a tap suit test. We didn't use the bomb suits we actually got dressed out in our charcoal mop gear and put on the rubber Gumby suit, the rubber aprons and gloves and gas masks, and did all of our PT and trials with that on, not the suit.
Oh, it doesn't sound any better. It might sound worse. Oh, goodness.
It's funny because you spent about 2 hours-ish in that suit, and every half an hour they would stop you and dump out your boots of water, and literally you sweated boots full of water.
Oh, gosh.
And then give you a canteen, and you had to drink the whole canteen before you continued the testing.
And you said, yes, sign me up.
I did, because somebody told me that I was going to get to blow stuff up.
Oh, there you go.
And
that was the carrot that got you, huh?
That was it.
Wow, what a journey. So, can you share some of the highlights of your career as an EOD tech?
So it started out really slow before 9/11. 9/11 happened, and I got assigned to D.C. So I spent a couple of weeks there in New York when the towers came down, hunting for bodies. They changed my orders. I was supposed to actually go to Pine Bluff Arsenal, which is where all the bugs were kept at that time. And they changed my orders to DC after I had already showed up in New York for a couple of weeks. And then I went to the Pentagon for about a month. My unit was there at Fort McNair, which is the bottom end of, it's the War College is there, the Army War College. So it's at the junction between the Anacostia River. So that's out there in 4th and M. So I spent a couple of years there. I deployed with that unit to Afghanistan in 2000, the end of 2001, beginning of 2002. Then bounced around between Iraq, Bosnia, Afghanistan, back and forth several times. After that, I got transferred out to the West Coast, where I started working for the Navy. And they asked me if I knew how to scuba dive. And I was like, well, I haven't done it in a while, but I am certified. So the first thing they did was sent me to Fort Bragg to learn how to jump out of perfectly good airplanes. I was like, I didn't sign up for jumping out of planes. I signed up to dive.
Oh my goodness.
So, they ran out of Navy EOD techs, so they started pulling on the Army. And I said, okay, sign me up.
Wow. That is wild. So you were still Army, but you were assigned to the Navy.
Yep.
And you started diving.
I started diving, and I was like, oh, I'm never going back again. Once I figured out that the Navy had way more toys in diving than I did, I was like, that's it. I'm doing it.
That is wild. But how does that work? Because the branches are so different. So did you just fall in with the Navy, or was it different accommodations or different commands, or how did that work?
I just kind of fell in with them. We had a lot of guys out there that were, EOD is a small community, and you start getting to know people, and they make things happen that wouldn't normally happen. The guy that really did it for me, his name was Mike Aramanda, and he was a Navy senior chief. I think he's still overseas working for the State Department doing mine clearing in the Bosnia-Herzegovina area.
Oh, wow.
But he kind of took me under his wing, him and Mike Woodward. Funny story, Mike was actually assigned to the mammal school in San Diego.
Interesting.
And he's a big guy, you know. I mean, he filled a doorway.
I feel like I've heard his name before.
Yep. He actually was a dolphin target.
Mm. Yeah, I think I've heard this story before.
It's funny to hear him talk about it. But good guys, awesome EOD techs. But yeah, they ended up in China Lake along with a few other guys. And I worked there for 8 years. And then finally got out and became a Navy civilian. Mm-hmm. Was a Navy civilian for quite a few years. Worked in missiles, Sidewinder, Standard Missile, just those few programs out there. And then I got a call that a buddy of mine, old diver friend of mine, called me that they needed a test engineer over at headquarters here in Tampa. And I was like, yeah, please sign me up.
Nice.
So I'm here in Tampa working for Special Operations Command.
That is awesome. So here at the Foundation, we are huge advocates on taking care of your mental health. Can you tell our listeners about some of the struggles that you may have had related to your service and your career as an EOD tech and how you take care of your mental health?
Wow. Yes. So in 2011, I had never gone to the VA. I had never asked for help. Obviously, you run in that community and you compartmentalize everything and you think you have it all under control until one day you're arguing with your teenage daughter and everybody's yelling and screaming, and I walk out the door to try and calm down. About 4 hours and 10 or 12 miles later, I wake up climbing a chain link fence at the hardware store in Ridgecrest, smelling fresh cut hay. And the shrinks think that the hay smell, because of my childhood growing up on a horse ranch, was what woke me up. I have no memory of that 4 hours. All I know is the Ridgecrest Police Department, he was a friend of mine, triangulated my cell phone that I didn't even realize I had and found me.
Wow.
The next day, I went down to the VA hospital in Sepulveda, down in LA, and said, I think I need some help. It took about 2 years for them to figure out how to balance me out. Mm-hmm. I guess when PTSD is kind of a big deal, and then when you couple that with I've had 3 traumatic brain injuries mm-hmm. Due to explosives being way too close. Mm. But Yeah, so you couple those two together, and it takes a cocktail. I guess our brains don't ever fix themselves once you've been in that kind of environment for as long as some of us have. And it took a few years to get balanced out. I ended up losing my wife. I lost my kids. They left me and moved here to Florida. Mm-hmm. I have since reconnected to the kids. The wife, and that wasn't fixable. Mm-hmm. But that was actually seeing two other EOD techs killed at the same deployment. We had three within a year on one deployment, and so between that and losing the family, it took a long time for me to get stable again. Mm-hmm. I guess it's kind of textbook, but I never did the drugs because I still work for the government and I had a top secret security clearance, but I did the alcohol really heavy. Mm-hmm. Took a long time to come out of that.
Yeah. And I'm sure that there are so many people listening that can completely relate to your story. And so I appreciate you sharing that with us. And so now, how do you continue that? How do you keep taking care of your mental health?
Diving. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have continued diving. I've got a few friends from the Navy that are here in Tampa, and they help out with the nonprofit. We actually stood it up. My wife was the catalyst that actually, I mean, it's been in the background, for years since my divorce, since losing my family. Mm-hmm. I wanted to figure out a way to help other veterans not lose their family, reconnect with their kids, reconnect with their spouse.
Wow.
And that was the genesis of Bubbles for Vets. Joe DeTuri, he was a L&O, naval diving officer, that I met while I was out in San Diego. And I followed him here to SOCOM. And he's been very instrumental in helping us stand this up.
Wow. Well, so that was a perfect segue, and I love the name Bubbles for Vets, by the way. So, can you tell us what made you decide to start this nonprofit? You said it was kind of like floating around, but what made you start this nonprofit on top of a full-time job? Because that is a lot. That is clearly a labor of love. So
it is a lot. My wife actually convinced me. She was like, "Hey, either we're going to do this or we're not." And I jokingly say that I told her, because I had a for-profit company, Two Wolves, that I teach diving, mm-hmm. and I do some salvage during hurricanes and stuff like that. But I hadn't really put the time into creating Bubbles until she really pushed me. She was like, "Hey, either we're going to do this or we're not."
Did you just refer to it as Bubbles?
I did.
That's awesome.
I told her, I said, "Well, if we're going to do this, you have to learn how to scuba dive." And she was on board. So
wow, how fun.
3 years later, she's got a couple hundred dives, and she is our underwater photographer.
Wow, how neat.
For all the classes we do for the families, she takes all the pictures.
Oh my gosh. Now, your nonprofit is unique in the fact that you offered the diving retreat to the whole family, which that is a lot of different components there. So can you tell us about what is your retreat like and walk us through a retreat?
Okay, so yes, it is really different. There's a couple of dive companies that do for the veterans. There's one that does the whole family, but they do like 30 families at a time, and they go to a destination like the Bahamas or the Azores, wherever. So we expose starting on, it's a whole weekend of diving and counseling. Mm-hmm. So they come in on Friday and they get to meet the counselors, either in person or video, depending on what they need. They have already filled out an application before they get to us. So if we need prosthetics, I have it built ahead of time to help them swim.
Wow.
I get a hold of whatever counselors. I have access to child psychologists, family counselors, therapists, whatever they need. These counselors volunteer their time to help the vets out. So when they arrive, they get to meet the counselors, and then all day Saturday, all day Sunday, they are diving with their kids. We supply all the gear. I have a couple of corporate sponsors that supply the gear. But they show up, they dive, and they create those memories, reconnect with their parents, and try to mend those relationships that have been definitely damaged by years and years of deployments.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow, that is so awesome. And where do they stay?
Well, it depends on whether they're local. If they're local, obviously they stay at home, but we furnish them hotels, rental car, food, money, whatever they need if they're coming from out of town. And then, we have a couple of dive shops here in town that will give us a captain and give us the boat. All we pay for is gas.
Wow, that is awesome. So can you tell us about some of the neat partnerships you've established? It sounds like you've got help all over the place.
Well, it is kind of funny. DEMA, which is International Diving Consortium event that happens every year. We went last year, and Next Diving, who is a company out of Monterey Bay. They supply all of our diving regulators. We've got a company called Backsplash, who furnishes the camera kits.
Wow.
Big video. Backscatter. I'm sorry. It's Backscatter. Furnishes the camera. They donated a camera, housing, memory cards, whatever we needed. And then Henderson, who provides our wetsuits.
That's incredible. That is really awesome. So for anyone listening who would like to apply for a retreat, what's your eligibility criteria and how can they apply?
It's super simple. They go to our website, which is bubblesforvets.org, and they put in an application. And all they have to have is they either have to be active duty or they have to be a veteran that has a disability rating. And it doesn't have to be any certain rating. It just has to be at least a VA rating. We're in the process of trying to get the VA to help out with some of the costs. It usually costs about $5,000 or $6,000 per family to do the whole weekend. So we're hopeful that very soon the VA will be pitching in for that.
Fingers crossed. Yes. Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. So I know Bubbles for Vets is relatively new, but what's your vision for the future?
Our goal is to have 6 families a year, one every other month, either certified if they want to get certified, or just the diving experience for the whole family. The counselors and the therapists follow the families for a year. So any more than 6 a year every other month would be a little hard to keep up with.
Yeah. Especially since they're donating their time. Yeah, that makes sense. Wow, well, that is a great goal, and it seems to me to be quite obtainable. So
I hope so.
I'm very excited for you. Yeah. Well, Tony, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us, and to share this awesome efforts that you guys have put into creating Bubbles for Vets. And it just seems like such a wonderful program. And I hope that the EOD techs and families out there listening to this podcast will reach out to you, and maybe attend one of these awesome retreats.
Please do.
Yeah.
The more the merrier.
And so for anybody listening that just wants to support, what's the best way for them to contact you?
We have donate buttons actually on our website.
Okay.
I don't pretend to understand how all that works, but my wife is really great at it.
Awesome.
So they can donate on the website, or they can call Bubbles for Vets. The phone number's on the website, and talk to us in person.
Perfect. Well, as is our tradition, we're going to end with a couple of questions of your favorite things. Ready?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
What is your favorite dive spot?
Believe it or not, it is Catalina off the coast of California.
Oh.
It's really cold, but you have all of the groves and sea lions. It's amazing. The kelp beds and the sea lions. It was one of my first dive spots, active duty, and I love it. I love going out there every year.
Oh, that's so nice. What is your favorite oceanic animal?
Nurse sharks.
Ooh.
Oddly enough, they are kind of like puppies of the ocean. Believe it or not,
wow.
They really love to have their head scratched. They will swim right up to you. And it's funny, I've got photographs. My wife took photographs of me and a nurse shark, and he's literally right here. Just swam up, started nudging me. I scratch his head, he swims off, comes back. They are amazing. They're just puppies.
That is wild. I've never heard that before. How cool. What is your favorite time of day to dive?
Oh, early in the morning.
Really? Is there a reason?
The water is usually calmer. The sunsets are magnificent. And even if it's cold, it's just calm and quiet, and you really get a connection with nature and understand why God created all of it. It's totally amazing.
Wow, that sounds great. Last question. What is your favorite thing about holding your retreats?
The look on the family's face when they realize they can breathe underwater and they're doing it together.
Wow. Oh, that is so neat, Tony.
I don't teach advanced classes for dive masters and instructors. I only teach the first 3 or 4 levels because of that look. It's amazing. You can't imagine how it feels for them to breathe underwater the first time. They get so excited.
That is incredible. I think I'm inspired. I have to go dive now. Wow. Well, so many interesting twists and turns in this interview, Tony. I just appreciate so much what you're doing and what you've done with your career. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our Behind the Warrior podcast, brought to you by the EOD Warrior Foundation. The EOD Warrior Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization serving the EOD community by providing financial assistance, scholarships, and providing hope and wellness resources for the active duty, reserve, National Guard, retired and veteran EOD communities and their families. We also honor our fallen and wounded EOD technicians by maintaining the EOD Memorial and Remembrance Garden. We do all this through the generosity of individual and corporate donors and sponsors. If you would like to assist the foundation or support our Behind the Warrior podcast, click the link on our webpage at eodwarriorfoundation.org or contact us at info@eodwarriorfoundation.org. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to tell a friend. The various opinions, beliefs, and viewpoints expressed by guests, contributors, and participants of the Behind the Warrior podcast are their own and are intended for informational purposes only. They do not necessarily reflect the opinions, beliefs, viewpoints, or policies of the EOD Warrior Foundation or its employees and volunteers.